again, and welcome back to Viewpoints on the Line. We're going on to our second subject matter now, and once again, our lines are open. If you want to talk about the first topic, join us for the second, you're free to do so. Take a look at it on your screen, entitled, "Will Dr. Laura Schlessinger survive her racial rant?" Now, this made headlines everywhere. Basically, any newscast coming out of the States, and even some here in Canada, feature this. The bottom line is, Dr. Laura Schlessinger is a known counselor. She used to be on the Canadian airwaves. She's controversial. I mean, that's how she's made her business. If you're going to call Laura Schlessinger for help, she's going to tell you it from her point of view, no matter how shocking, no matter how it is. That's the kind of a woman she is. In fact, when she was on the Canadian Airways and she ended up diminishing her role in the broadcast circles for a while, it was because she ruffled the feathers of the gay community. Lost advertisers in the process, lost a lot of her following from that point of view in terms of the advertising. And here she is now. She was on the phone talking to an Afro-American lady that was asking the question, because she's married to a white person, that certain offensive words were used by the guy's family, and how should she handle this? Well, Laura Schlessinger got a little bit politically incorrect, shall we say? And that's the point we're arguing here. Do you think she really went over the top? She eventually apologized. Now, why did she apologize? Was it because she saw what was unfolding in terms of her career and felt threatened by it? Was it the onslaught, the barrage that she experienced because of the incident? We have a YouTube clip to show you, by the way, and we're going to show it to you very shortly to give you more of a background. But before we do so, I'd like just a touch of an explanation of what your point is here in regards to Dr. Schlessinger. Dr. Laura, better known as.
Right. Well, a lot of play is focused on that she used the word 3 times.
10 times.
Or 10 times, sorry. But I think she was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
She grouped them in threes.
Yeah, she did them in threes. And so, but then her explanation after the fact was, well, comedians use this, and they're black, so it's okay for them to use it. How come the double standard? And double standard kind of misses the whole point. Let's say it is a double standard. You haven't yet identified whether it's right or wrong. I mean, if one guy gets off on murder and another guy doesn't get off on murder.
Just because they do it doesn't mean you should do it.
That doesn't mean murder's good, right? And the thing about the N-word is that it's a word that's used to say that if you have this color of skin, then you are a member of this collective. And as a member of that collective, I'm saying by using the N-word that I'm condemning you. So I don't know anything about you except the color of your skin. So I'm condemning you on your membership that I made you a member of, not you. I made you a member of this thing defined by skin color, and I'm condemning anyone with that skin color. It's an assault on justice. It's immoral. So saying, well, other people do it, doesn't make it any better.
I like that point of view. I like that point of view. Another argument, and I'm trying to be consistent here. We've discussed on the line many political scenarios, and for those who love Canada, they don't want to see, again, that first topic that we discussed. I've heard people say, well, if you go into their country, what they would do to you if you came in to try to give your point. But you got a good point here. We pride ourselves on a system of justice and what's right. And I like your point of, just because somebody does something doesn't mean you have to do it. Quick point there, Vernal?
Well, when we look at etymology, I think, and the vernacular, I think people have to understand that words have weight. In terms of being politically correct, the whole premise is that you want to basically say things to people without offending. That's the true essence and the epitome of what it means to be politically correct. When you're using words that are very controversial and it's very derogatory, very slanderous, you have to be very careful either way. And yes, people argue that there's, for example, in certain type of music, like rap music or hip hop, that they use stuff like that. I don't think that because people use it, it should be justifiable. So I think that even though someone may have a premise of why they're using it, I think that the whole goal should be political correctness in terms of not trying to offend people, and that's any derogatory, words that come out.
You got a point though. You got a point though about the rappers that use this word, and I'm just going to give you. You may not agree with me, but I'm going to give this as food for thought. All of us as parents in the family might have gotten angry at times and tell our children things like, "Why do you have to be so lazy?" and whatever, okay? And we never condone that, but it happens sometimes. Now, to call your child out in public, why do you have to be so lazy and chastise your child in front of the child's class? After that, would you expect that child to get the needed and deserved respect from other classmates? That's the comparison I'm making when you look at these rappers who use the N-word. I can't say it's the same thing if a white person, for example, uses it, because it's seen as very offensive given a very real history here of racism and slavery and so forth. But why would members of the black community do that? Why would they put down members of their own race by using that word and expect that there's going to be a respect to follow? Now, just a little bit of food for thought to stir up the pot a little bit. We'll hear from our guests in a while, but we've got a YouTube clip for you to see. If you happen to miss that big blow up about Laura Schlessinger, which really turned into a brouhaha, well, you're going to find out what's fueling it now. If that YouTube clip is ready, let's take a look at it now.
Radio talk show host Dr. Laura Schlessinger has issued an apology saying she did the wrong thing after repeatedly using a racial slur during an August 10, 2010 on-air discussion with a caller. According to CNN, Schlessinger said the N-word several times during a conversation with an African-American woman with a white husband who called to complain that she was getting fed up with her husband allowing his family and friends to say things that she felt were racist. The woman, who identified herself as Jade, then asked Schlessinger if the N-word was offensive. According to the Associated Press, Schlessinger said, "Black guys say it all the time." She then repeated the slur several times. The AP says Schlessinger did not direct the epithet at the woman, but said she used it to suggest how often she hears it and that it should not automatically be cause for offense. When Jade objected, Schlessinger said, "Oh, then I guess you don't watch HBO or listen to any black comedians." Towards the end of the call, Dr. Laura tells Jade, if you're that hypersensitive about color and don't have a sense of humor, don't marry out of your race. Schlessinger posted an apology on her website on August 11, 2010, saying, "I talk every day about doing the right thing, and yesterday I did the wrong thing." Schlessinger went on to say that during the exchange with the caller, she realized she'd made a horrible mistake. She said she was so upset she couldn't finish the show and pulled herself off the air at the end of the hour. Schlesinger's use of the N-word on her show drew harsh criticism from some, including the Reverend Al Sharpton. During an interview with CNN on August 12, 2010, Sharpton said of Schlesinger's comments, "That is despicable." Sharpton went on to say that she said the word over and over in a very animated way, I might add, but that she actually, if you listen carefully to the logic of what she was saying, was that the N-word was not offensive. For more information on this topic and to listen to an entire audio recording of Dr. Schlesinger's call, visit the links below.
So what do you make of that, folks?
Well, just before we went to that clip, you'd said, why would black comedians use this language? I find it equally repulsive, and I think the reason that they use it is to say, believe it or not, we're the in-group. I'm talking to only other black people. And they too are saying, we are a collective defined by the color of our skin. It's wrong, it's morally wrong. Not every person who happens to have black skin thinks that they should be lumped into this category defined by the N-word. It's offensive. I only wish that Dr. Laura weren't the only one being hammered here. I mean, this news reporting that's gone on since should have said, hey, and let's haul up on the carpet the very comedians that she was talking about. I'm not letting her off the hook at all. I'm just simply saying there's a lot of people that are guilty of the exact same thing, and the media needs to condemn them as well, because the point is not some people do it, therefore it's okay. The point is that it is as cozy as it might feel to say, hey, you're like me, so we can call ourselves that. It's disgusting.
It breeds a disrespect, and that's my concern.
Yeah.
Vernal, your thoughts here?
There's a scripture that says that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that eat its fruit thereof. And basically I want to say that, are we inspiring people when we use certain terms? I mean, there's some people that use the word selfish, and it usually has a negative connotation, but you can use it in a positive way. Having said that, when you're looking at words like that are very controversial, as I stated before, I think we have to exercise more sound judgment. And if you're going to call people certain names, you're going to have to expect the repercussions of such. And I think what happens is that people are desensitized because they hear it a lot in the music and as a comedic joke. But we have to understand that when you go back into history, it was no offense. It was, respectfully, it wasn't intended comedically, nor was intended
Dr. Laura, do you think she is racist? Do you think she did it intentionally, or did she just go over the top and got carried away?
I think what happens, to be very honest, is that there's people that take certain things in extreme, and I think what she was trying to do was an extreme, and I think what happens is that the extreme still wasn't justifiable. I think you have to be, when you're saying certain things, even like us right now, everything that we're saying is going to be scrutinized by the listener. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to be taken out of context, and it doesn't mean that people can't misunderstand or misconstrue what we're trying to say. However, when you're saying certain things, you have to be very conscious, especially in a public forum. And nowadays, because of the information age, anything that you can say can really be taken out way out of context. So
yes.
I think ultimately it was a bad choice on her part.
Yes.
And I think moving forward, I think we should all be more conscious of what we
there's
say
a saying out
and
there.
we use.
There's a saying out there in broadcasting, you got I-missed. Okay, that's what I hear. If you know the background of Don Imus now, I cannot apparently repeat what the guy said.
Yeah.
There have been comparisons made on what he said versus what she said. And frankly, I don't see how the two could be compared, because Don Imus was, yes, he's a shock jock. He was joking around, and his point exactly was, well, if you have black people making fun of black people, then why can't I do it? But the point is, this man lost his work for it. It was what I found really upsetting about what he said, he was, in his jokes, he was targeting a young group of girls in a college. And to me, that was the height of insensitivity and very insulting to that group of girls enrolled in sports. I don't see where the comparison is here. I see what Laura Schlessinger was trying to accomplish. I think obviously she made a big mistake and she apologized for it, but do you think she should be I-missed? Do you believe she should?
Well, first of all, I don't think she dislikes black people. I don't
think that either. But did Don Imus dislike black people?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But
it was interesting, in the call, it was actually the caller that calls Schlesinger who used the word first. And so you might think that she, at that point, was giving Schlesinger license to use it. That might be why she started using it. But there's another aspect to this that I find fascinating, and that is, in Canada, we wouldn't be talking about, is she going to lose popularity over this? Is this unpopular? Has it come back to haunt her in terms of being morally condemned? We'd be talking about some human rights tribunal fining her, throwing her in jail. So I think in that sense, what's happening to her is a great example of how good freedom works and why we don't need to throw people in jail for saying stupid or racist or whatever things.
Great point. Before we go for a break, once again, our lines are open and we want to hear any topic that you want to talk about today that we've discussed. Go ahead. Let's go to Annette on line 8. Hello, Annette. You're on the line.
Hi. I just want to ask, I want to just tell you that someone called in and said that she belongs to the community as well, Tamil community, about the boats coming. And she said there are like 300,000 people. There cannot be all 300,000 people sitting on welfare. I don't think that's true, because even yesterday at Michael Coren's show, they were saying that they are very hardworking people, and the government won't be just taking people like that if they're just sitting.
Two things, Annette. I appreciate your call, but she wasn't saying that everybody's sitting on welfare. She was concerned that this particular group of people, they're coming in as so-called refugees, but with every article that you're reading, this is pointing to be part of a smuggling ring. When you look at how they're being processed through the jail system, fingerprinted and so on, there are a lot of questions. All the information isn't on the table yet, I have to say, but a lot of questions are being raised about these people, whether they belong to terrorist groups, what they are indeed coming in to offer this country. But I'm glad you called in, Annette. We need to make it clear that not every Tamil living in this country by any stretch is a bum or is a terrorist. We got a lot of hardworking Tamils in this country. But the question our other caller was raising is, we need to really look and take a good look. While we cannot assume that every Tamil that comes here is sinister, we cannot assume either that everyone that comes in here is going to be hardworking and a benefit to the country. Thanks for calling in. Fred on line 6. Hi, Fred. You're on the line.
Back to the Tamil issue for a minute there. What I haven't heard is that Canadians don't seem to have an offshore policy on this issue. If the Canadian embassy in countries such as Tamil, where they have a war or a conflict which is going to generate these refugees, we should recognize that Canada has a reputation outside that's going to draw these people to it. Once these folks get on a boat, our hands are tied. We have to deal with it. So let's make sure that we have an identified infrastructure offshore that allows these people to be processed with sponsors and at least have a sympathetic interview, so that these people can be processed properly.
Fred, I'm glad you called in. You're being very reasonable about this. We certainly need to have a better system. We're going to go for a break now. We'll return after this. Don't go away. Hello again and welcome back to Viewpoints on the Line. Once again, our lines are open. We don't like you to be shy. Many times I get on the screen or somebody telling me from the control room, the call monitor, that somebody wants to ask a question. And my answer is usually back, please try to motivate that caller to call in themselves because I love to hear from you. Now, normally I don't address them unless you call in, but one caller really wants to know, and I think it's valid here, but I wish you had called in for yourself. Is racism a big issue today as it was, as history has shown, historically? Is it a big issue today? What do you guys think?
Yes and no. No in this sense that we don't see what we saw in southern United States anymore. We have a society in which people, for the most part, get served anywhere they want to put their money down. But racism is certainly all around, and it's expressed in things that, in things like, we are a community of fill in the blanks. Defined by skin color, defined by language, defined by religion. These collectivism is alive and well, and unfortunately it's been encouraged in Canada, despite the fact that our charter is one that sees us as individuals, that doesn't judge us according to skin color and language and etc. And I think it's a dangerous move. I think it's fostered by the left, who see collectives as a way to gain political power, to create an us and them between people based on their skin color, between people based on, I mean, if you look at the census, for example, what did that provide you with? Clusters, collectives, who can then say, this collective has less money than that collective. It's that racism was alive and well in government policy. And so, yes, I think it's wrong. It's not taking the form of violence, it's taking the form of politicized wealth redistribution.
Even on a personal level, I think it does exist. It's more subtle now. But another dynamic that we see happening in our country with immigration is the racism that exists between visible minorities. A lot of white Canadians don't realize how intense that racism is that exists between visible minorities themselves. And because Canada has become such a country of immigrants and is going to be more so in the future, we're seeing an evolution of racism in this country, which is different than it used to be. Your opinion here?
Well, discrimination, goes way back from the beginning of time.
Every country has it though, and that's
correct. But the problem is that sometimes with discrimination, there's such a strong emphasis. Now, discrimination really sets in once when you have power. And so from a governmental, even from the media, I mean, from an employer hiring someone. So there's different dynamics. Now, it's not as extreme based on, back in the South when there was a lot of killing back in, up to the 1800s, et cetera. But I think what people have to understand is that racism still, it prevents, it prevents people from really moving forward in terms of just being a normal citizen in this country, because there's a lot of things that you won't get access to because of racism. I think people have to understand there's another aspect of racism, and it's also omission. So sometimes you may not say no aloud, but you're saying only this race. Omission is still a form of racism, and I think those are the things that people are not taking into consideration. With respect with the doctor, I think that she should be reprimanded, because I think what happened is people are taking this freedom of speech sometimes to the extreme, whereby you're not inspiring people. You're making people feel subhuman and subpar. And I think that if that's going to be the case, then you're going to have to be dealt with accordingly.
Another point that Dr. Schlessinger was making that I think is important here to at least mention is she told the lady, which I don't agree with her style, I don't agree with what she said here because it's not necessarily true, but embedded in it was a piece of truth. She said, well, if you're that sensitive about the N-word, then you shouldn't have married outside your race. I don't think that's necessarily so. And that's not really accurate within itself. But there's one point that Dr. Schlessinger made. We've seen it. All of you watching perhaps have seen it on some level, that when racism becomes that you are the one feeling like you might be on the victim end, when it gets to that point where you're so angry that you're even committing crime and saying it's because of racism, we have this going on where people are so sensitive and upset about it, they become absolutely crippled by it and over the top sensitive. Perhaps this is what Dr. Schlessinger was trying to bring out in the open. Don't be that sensitive about it. Do you think she had a point? She took it too far. I think we all agree on that. But do you see that aspect? Are people taking this too far?
I think the one line, she said something to the effect of, if you're that obsessed with color, or something along that
Or if you're
line.
that sensitive about it, then don't marry outside of your race.
I don't subscribe to what she
no,
said.
I don't either.
Don't marry
but
outside
the
your
point
race.
about oversensitivity, do you think that exists as an entity unto itself?
It's worse than oversensitivity. It's also, in some cases, people are demanding that traits that have nothing to do with them as an individual grant them some kind of value. In other words, take Germany. I'm more valuable than you are because I'm blonde and blue-eyed and white-skinned, and therefore my dollar's worth more than yours, in a sense. Okay? That, whether you're saying I'm great because of this skin color or this language or this heritage, nationality, what have you, it's all garbage, it's all collectivism.
Yes, but don't people need to realize that themselves, not to be oversensitive about it? Wherever you go, racism is going to exist. Discrimination exists. We need to fight it tooth and nail, we agree. But do you see the sense in being oversensitive about it, letting it really get you down for it all?
I would have to define what does it mean to be oversensitive. I mean, if you think that someone's saying something that could be derogatory in a general sense, well, then yes. But again, when it affects you getting a job, when it affects you going on the taxi, getting a taxi, when it affects you, in terms of getting a raise or promotion, and getting into a certain school to, So I mean, so are we being oversensitive? If you take what she said, even in context, again, it's bringing down the morale of the caller, and not necessarily the caller that she said, but callers coming in. Because if you're asking someone for advice, and in the process they're bringing you down with, infusing this peppery expressions and contradictory words, then I think at that point, how valuable is where you are. And also, too, in terms of her position, she should have, her job title,
and I believe that's why she apologized so profusely after. Great conversation, guys, and that's all the time we have for today. See you again next time. I'm Christine Williams, and from all of us, thank you for watching.
If you wish to make a comment or have a question, please send your email to ontheline@ctstv.com.